Remember, the name of the game is value. Why do we measure? So we can gain information that will help us decide, help us identify issues and problems, help us know when to intervene, help us justify a change. After making a decision, when we measure again, our decision, we hope, will be validated. Then we could pat ourselves on the back. The act of measuring could also be used to influence behavior. This could be behavior we want to see, or the act of measuring may bring about unwanted, undesirable, and counterproductive behavior. Goodhart's law says, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. There are 5 typical high-level measurement types to consider. Progress measurements, for example, actual completion timing versus planned. Compliance or conformance measurements. For example, the number of defects in deliverables or performance errors, or perhaps even the attendance record for mandatory meetings, etc. Effectiveness measurements. For example, you can measure the effectiveness of the deliverables produced by the individual. Assess how fit for purpose they are. Efficiency measurements. For example, work efficiency can consider time and money needed to produce an output that meets quality specifications. Thus, it considers the balance between quantity and quality. Billable utilization can consider the cost per team member compared to a benchmark or goal. And productivity measurements, for example, the number of outputs per a given period. Note that all the types I just mentioned will give us those lovely inherently absolute numbers that I talked about in my last video. So what do you care about? Let's say I care about how many of Taylor's deliverables were compliant. 8 of 10? Okay, that means that Taylor's deliverables are 80% compliant right now. Note that these KPIs that you come up with should be SMART. And each letter of SMART stands for something: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. KPIs are quantifiable. KPIs can be as simple as a yes or no. KPIs can be categorized, so into quality, compliance, performance, value, safety, financial, etc. There might be standard project KPIs that you'll use to assess your individual team members. And as you know, before you even acquire your project team, you're getting this clearer and clearer sense of the skills and competencies and experience and capabilities and knowledge that your project team members must possess in order to carry out their project work effectively and efficiently. As part of resource planning, you would pinpoint all the needed skills, etc., and perhaps even document your requirements in your resource plan. Even if you plan to acquire resources with certain skill sets, competencies, capabilities, experience, and knowledge, and actually, we always want to look at their EI right now too, but that's another story. But when you look at your assigned resources, you might notice there's a gap, right? And so you might notice a development opportunity. So you could create KPIs to track progress in that development area as well. As project managers, we're acquiring, developing, training, mentoring, coaching, motivating, and retaining the people needed to turn our project vision into reality. One of my favorite PM sayings is from Kim Heldman, PMP. She said, "Availability is not a skill set." And I don't feel alone now that I found out that research sponsored by PMI showed that talent deficiencies significantly hamper 40% of strategy implementation efforts. Ouch. So for one reason or another, you're there to help your team members grow. Key performance indicators will help set expectations regarding your team members' growth and regarding their performance. These should be set and discussed at the beginning of your project and revisit as applicable as the project ensues. By establishing KPIs, we could periodically assess the performance of our team members. KPIs are defined in ways that are understandable, meaningful, and measurable. And always keep the key in KPIs. You only need a handful, likely 2 to 5. In being key, that means these are the most important. Remember, value, value, value. These KPIs need to be useful and have worth and be important. Measure what matters. Focus on the right things. If you come up with KPIs with each of your team members, then there'll be shared ownership versus trying to get buy-in. The team member will know how their performance is feeding into the project's success. Even if they did not come up with the KPIs with you, they would still need to know how all those dots are connected here. How is my performance feeding into the success of the project? And go one step further into the step of the into the success of the organization at large, into the success of the whole wide world. You also never want to collect KPIs or any other measurements to punish someone. We measure for a handful of reasons: to validate, to influence. Setting expectations affects the behaviors that we see, to justify a course of action, and to intervene. You also don't want to find yourself in a situation whereby your team is striving to hit the numbers. So the people are going to hit those numbers even if it breaks your project. For individual team members, KPIs could be related to on-time delivery of tasks, meeting a milestone, quality, compliance, schedule, cost, productivity, maybe billable hours, maybe completing a specific training, attaining a specific certification, mentoring specific stakeholders for a specific duration regarding a specific topic, or even shadowing a peer to gain expertise in a specific area. So yeah, that was a long list, but remember, you don't want all of those as your KPIs. Think 5 max. Again, be careful when documenting the KPIs. If your KPI for a web developer is lines of code written, then the developer might write unnecessarily lengthy lines of code, right? You want to make sure the team members are billing enough hours to clients per day, let's say, but you certainly don't want them to just waste time, right? Mark things off as billable, take a long time on something. So you would need a means to also ensure that these hours were really spent on client project work and that the time spent matches the agreed time estimate within reason, right? And it's related to the agreed scope. So the act of measuring influences behavior. Be careful. Make sure your metrics will encourage the behaviors that are valuable. Avoid measures that are rooted in a lack of trust or measurements that you want to capture so you could get someone in trouble later. Remember, the name of the game is value. Focus on outcomes too. What KPIs tie to the outcomes, the results your project exists to deliver. Balanced bundles of metrics include output related and behavioral or some more behavior related metrics. They consider outputs, deliverables, and outcomes, results. Since a big part of being a PM is being a servant leader, consider KPIs that show development. So basically you could look at progress towards filling a gap by setting a KPI, and you could establish a SMART goal around that. You could do the same for team member growth in general, because servant leaders help develop their team. I say you don't want to force or waste your life trying to force things that are qualitative and subjective into a quantitative measure. Just embrace the idea of, okay, I'm also going to assess qualitative things over here, right? Because we know we've seen this importance of high performing team traits and all that other stuff I already talked about. Also, Tom Kendrick, PMP, talks about the importance of measuring tension. Metrics in aggregate contribute to desired performance. So assessing speed or accuracy alone can cause undesirable behavior. I'll close this video with an example of SMART criteria. Let's say I'm interested in tracking Taylor's % task completed on time. So to make that SMART, S, specific, tasks are completed on time and have received sign off that the acceptance criteria have been met. M, measurable, tasks completed divided by tasks due times 100% has to be 90% or higher. A, achievable, both parties agree that this is achievable. R, relevant, this is relevant to the team hitting the milestones laid out in the project charter, as well as the strategic importance of our project in coming in on time. And T, time bound. Since we're breaking up the work by week, we could check this KPI weekly. If tasks are not getting completed on time and or accepted, then we'll look for root causes so that next time we could track a performance improvement. As you come up with your KPIs for the individual team members, make sure that you focus on what matters. Done wrong, KPI could lead to lots of issues such as unwanted behaviors, gaming the system, management through fear, KPIs that don't reflect or truly reflect performance, so lack of value or even worse. So remember, the name of the game is always value. Focus on value, not on micro objectives. Smart KPIs are great, but also think about balancing out your metrics with outcome-oriented assessments and qualitative assessments. I keep showing this Glassdoor example because I think it's great. How do I assess Taylor on these dimensions? Or I could use factors associated with high-performing teams. Or I could assess my individual team members on factors that relate to well-being at work. So yes, smart KPIs and balance those out. Remember, outputs enable outcomes. So yeah, it's cool to measure outputs, but also let's measure some outcomes. Balance bundles of metrics. And it's great to use KPIs, which are quantitative, but balance those out with qualitative feedback/assessments as well. And there you have it. 1.3.1, appraise team member performance against key performance indicators. So this is an individual team member. So we're doing one team member, another team member, another team member. KPIs, tension, as Tom Kendrick, PMP, puts it. So it's not just about, say, speed, but there's tension with quality. And think outcome-oriented assessments and qualitative assessment. By the way, there's more. Though PMI doesn't call out appraise team performance against key performance indicators, the team as a whole, you certainly want to do that too. Coming up with team performance KPIs, et cetera, with your team will establish shared ownership and more commitment. And again, it's just a handful of KPIs. Put the key in key performance indicators. That'll do the trick. And that's the gist of 1.3.1 plus my 2 cents, another 2 cents, another 2 cents. I will see you in the next video.